Okay, let's get started.
All right, Mr. Hoffaker, if you could please let us know when we're live.
We're live.
Thank you, sir.
Guess I'll try it. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you for coming here. Can you go ahead and call roll?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Stephanie Benenato. Earl Breckner. Bridget Dixon.
Here.
Cynthia Sandoval.
Here.
Ray Sandoval.
Here.
James Sullivan. And Chair Trujillo.
Here.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. So let's get started with the first item on the agenda.
You want to approve the agenda, sir?
Right.
Sorry.
No, thank you. So, do we have minutes for the last thing too, or just the agenda? Okay, so, are there any changes to the agenda that anybody wants to make? Okay, so the chair entertains a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. We have an agenda. Let's go to the first item on the agenda.
First item on, or the next item on the agenda is for discussion, agenda and possible action. It's discussion and possible approval of the mayor's salary pursuant to SFCC 1987, section 6-19-2.
Okay, did everybody have a chance to look at the information that was presented us? Bernadette, can you go ahead and just summarize it for us, please?
Good morning. Yes, Mr. Chairman. What I did and sent to all the members last evening was to include additional cities that are comparable primarily in population size. I also provided some information about forms of government to help clarify some of the vast differences in the salary between the different cities that are on the spreadsheet in hopes that would help clarify some of the differences. So as you can see, some of the primarily most of the cities that we have in front of us on the spreadsheet are council mayor forms of government, and some are the council manager, and some of them are council mayor. There's a couple that there's us, and then the city of Gilbert, Arizona, that I found that are more of a hybrid that take some components of the council mayor and some of the council manager forms of government. And as you can see on the spreadsheet, again, the annual salaries vary from city to city.
Okay, let's kind of open up with discussion, I guess. Is there, so you got the information from forms of government and the things that we did, like from the information from the Southwest. Does anybody in the committee think that we need more information, or do you think we have enough information here, or?
I think it's hard because we know we're on a strict timeline, and I think something typically like this would take months to go through the data and to look at it. One of the questions I did have about the salaries that were presented on the spreadsheet is whether or not they were based off a 40-hour work week. And so it sounds, from the response I got, it sounds like most of the counselor manager forms of government will have a part-time mayor. And so some of the numbers we're seeing are probably reflective of that part-time nature of that position. So it's hard to compare apples to apples if we're looking at an annual salary that's based off of full-time work versus part-time work.
Do we have any idea which communities are based on part-time work versus full-time?
Mr. Chairman, Member Dixon, I didn't have time to look at specifically if they are full-time or part-time, but typically when you see council manager, oftentimes that form of government, you may see that the mayor is more of a part-time position, but every city varies. It just depends on how their ordinance or their city code is written. So every single one will probably vary some. And to Chairman Trujillo's point, I think also looking at the services provided when I was doing this research, you know, I was trying to figure out a good way to figure out what services they all provide, and maybe providing the departments of the city might be helpful. That information seems to be readily available on each of these websites for the city, so I can certainly work on that as soon as this meeting is over, and maybe that will shed a little more light on the functions and services that each of the cities offer.
Okay, as we go on, let's kind of go into the little bit of housekeeping. So if you could raise your hand, you can go through the chair and go through that type of a process. I mean, I like a free form, but I think that's kind of how we're supposed to do it. Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to have anything? Mr. Vice Chair, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, we can get more information, but as far as departments, I'm not sure how that's going to help us, because departments might not be as we know departments. They might cross lines and have different lines. And ultimately, a city government has to do the basic things that we all do. So what departments are called and how they work out, I'm not sure in the limited amount of time that that's a productive thing for us to know, whether that's really useful. And maybe we ought to hold that in abeyance until we finish our discussion as far as any instructions about what staff should be doing in the 12 hours.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything that they, Bridget, go ahead.
I guess one of the questions or concerns I have is the cost of living, what that looks like in the different communities, because I think obviously, I would think that we would want our mayors to be able to afford to live in the community that he represents. I don't know if we have any data on some of these communities, what their average cost of living, what their home prices averages are.
Mr. Chairman, Member Dixon, I can certainly include that in some research that I do as soon as this meeting is concluded.
Go ahead, Member Benedetto.
I agree with a member that knowing departments may not be that helpful. I think knowing the hours of the mayor, like is the mayor full-time, part-time, I think is more helpful than the number of departments. I think providing us the number of employees, which you did, is helpful. Because some of these jobs are like 850 people or 600 compared to the 1,200 that are in Santa Fe. So I do think that that's important. And I'm sort of echoing what the co-chair or vice chair said in a little private discussion, but I really think it's important that we remember that this is an elected official, and that we hope that part of what's driving that person is a desire to serve the community and to be part of the community. It's not just a job, even if it's a highly placed professional job. He's not, or she, or they are not just the CEO of the city of Santa Fe. So I think that is a factor that we hopefully will consider. Oh, and one more idea, which I don't know if it's good or bad, but should we invite Mayor Weber to come and describe a typical day to us or a typical week? So we would have an idea of like how much of his time is spent in political activity, how much is spent as a CEO, how much is spent as a legislator. Does that make a difference or not? I don't know, but I just think it's useful information.
Member Cynthia Sandoval?
Yes, I do think that that would be a good idea. One of the things I was going to see if we had, if we could look at the job description for the mayor versus the city manager. I think it is helpful to see kind of where, what their roles and responsibilities are, what final decisions they make. Because I can see like the only, we have Gilbert as the only hybrid model, because I think we're pretty unique. And if they're split out similarly, that could be very helpful. So I think it would be good to know that, but I also want to mention too, I know how much information you provided in such a short amount of time. I know how much time this amount of work takes, so I want to recognize that. And I know that we're trying to have a really big, heavy lift in such a short turnaround. So, but thank you for the information you have provided.
Hold on, let me recognize. Go ahead, Bernadette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member Sandoval, I thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that everyone knows we don't have a job description for the mayor. The duties are set forth in our city code, but I can send that out, and it really does outline all the responsibilities. So I can send that out again this afternoon, if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
You're commenting on the concept of inviting the mayor. I think that goes against, to a degree, what we're trying to do. And it focuses on this administration and this mayor, where our role, I think, should be looking forward. This mayor may not be the mayor in 2026 when it goes into effect. And, or any changes in salary might go into effect. And I think we should be looking at the concept, in our thinking, we should be looking at the concept of any mayor, the generic mayor of Santa Fe, and to invite one mayor to this session on one occasion might be counterproductive.
Okay, but I would just, I would just counter with that and say, Mayor Weber is the only mayor that we've had since we've changed to this form of government. And he is really the only one that we could, I mean, no matter what you think of Mayor Weber, I think his insights would be valuable to understand what he does in his workday and stuff like that. I mean, I agree. We need to think about this going forward and how things are going, but he's the first mayor that came under this new system. And so I think his insights about what he does in a typical day or how he does in a week or whatever, I think they would be valuable. That's just my opinion. So one of the things, do you have any, I'm looking at this data again, and do you have like any like averages or regional salary points that we're talking about where some of these mayors are? I mean, one of the things I can tell you is that when I was in the economic development department over here for the city, we did a workforce study that Department of Workforce Solutions did, and we did it by industry. And one of the things that jumped out to me, I mean, and this was like 4 or 5 years ago, so this data is dated, but one of the things that jumped out to me was that the only industries that were market industries for that people who worked over here in Santa Fe was the people who were getting the living wage, because they were tied to the consumer price index. And that mostly everybody who was working here, with the exception of people who worked at the national labs, were below the industry averages for their profession or for what they did. So, you know, some were significantly below, some were just a little bit below, but it was, um, I don't know, it made a big impression upon me when the Department of Workforce Solutions was presenting the different salaries by industry and occupation. And I realized that as an economic developer, we needed to do better to try and get companies that were expanding or groups that were expanding that were going to pay a higher wage, particularly because of the cost of living over here. So do you have any benchmarks of how this compares with the consumer price index or with some of these salaries, I mean, regionally or even nationally?
Mr. Chairman, yes, as I was doing this research, I did look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and when you really hone in on this, I think we are in a unique situation because when you look at comparables as far as New Mexico goes, the average is low because a lot of mayors in the state of New Mexico make less. I do want to point out, thank you to Vice Chair Breckner, City of Albuquerque mayor will actually be increasing the salary to 100 and I believe it's 146,000 and some change at the upcoming election and when the new mayor is elected in 2026. But overall, the state of New Mexico, when you look at the average pay for mayors specifically, it's relatively low. When you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and you start pulling in CEOs, it's a little bit different than mayor's salary, but the mayor's role, because it's an elected position, is a little bit different. So if you go a little broad, the salary is going to increase. If you hone in and specifically state the position of mayor, it's going to vary. And as you can see throughout the different cities in the country, especially some that are more part-time and more ceremonial, you're going to see that the average pay is really going to drive that down.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Member Cynthia Sandoval?
Can I ask, when was the last time the mayor's salary was adjusted up?
Mr. Chairman, Member Sandoval, the initial salary for the mayor was established when the new form of government, I believe, and I will verify, but I believe it was established at about 78,000. And the change to the charter required this commission to be established. And when it was established, then that's when the salary was set at about 110,000, what it is now. They were required to do this work, the committee, in 2021, and they changed again the charter. The salary stayed the same and now required this work to be done by April 30th, essentially of 2024. So when the mayor was elected in 2018, the salary was 110,000 and some change, and it has remained the same since then.
And the responsibilities have changed.
Mr. Chairman, Member Sandoval, the charter changed when the mayor was elected, so his responsibilities have been the same since he was elected in 2018, and then he was re-elected, but the responsibilities have remained the same.
And just one follow-up. For city employees, what this fiscal year, what sort of increase did they receive?
Mr. Chairman, Member Sandoval, for FY24, it was a split based on salary. So the most someone could get would be 3% and then 2% for people earning 100,000 or more.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Member Bernardo.
So I've been sort of thinking about this in a way of you have political activity, you have executive activity, and you have legislative activity. You also have city council who are involved in legislative activity and political activity. And I wonder now, because I think there's a cost of living increase for counselors, what are they making at this point? And do they have an automatic cost of living increase, which I think they do?
Mr. Chairman, Member Beninatto, I don't have the exact salary for our counselors. I can certainly get that to you by this afternoon as soon as this meeting is over. And that is set by our municipal code, which is then, I believe, set at the legislative level. And it's not an automatic increase every year, like for regular employees. But I can tell you when the next increase is scheduled, if there is one to be implemented.
Okay, thank you. I mean, to me, it's a little bit of comparing like what the counselors are doing, being part-time, and then what the mayor does being full-time. And I guess I have questions about how much executive action he actually takes, because it sounds like the person will appoint 3 major offices: clerk, attorney, and manager. And then it's sort of like, he steps back and lets the whole show go. And for me, I would like a CEO who's a little more involved, but that's a personal thing. But I look at that as what activity is really going on, because what I see when you brought this up is that the mayor's involved in the budget, which the counselors are also involved in the budget. And then the mayor's supposed to come up with some kind of legislative program. And although counselors no doubt have legislation they want to introduce, it's probably not as full, as holistic, hopefully, as the mayor's proposals would be. So I think we need to look at those things. I am looking at those things, and I hope others will look at those things in terms of trying to determine, say, the same, lower, or higher in terms of the mayor's salary.
Go ahead, Bernadette.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to point out, when I send the information about the changes to the code, one of the primary functions is the mayor is to establish a budget and recommend it to the governing body. So that's one primary function of the mayor.
So, do you think the mayor is available to come and tell us what he does? I mean, I know it's a last minute thing, but, or do you want to, contact him for tomorrow, or how are we going to do this? Because I think it would be valuable to hear this. I can tell you, as a person who's worked under both forms of government, in the mayor's thing, I've seen almost all the mayors pretty much work a full-time job. And so now the current mayor's working, he's working a full-time job and he's getting paid for it, but their duties and their powers shifted. But I think it would be better for us to hear, now that we're talking about this, I think it would be better to hear exactly what the mayor does. And so it'd be good, I think, for the committee to understand what his day's like and stuff like that, or what he's doing it. So I don't know if he's available, but it would be great if he is.
Mr. Chairman, I can certainly ask.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead,
Well,
Vice Chair.
If we're going to do that, maybe we should even, take a 5-minute recess and see if he's available.
Bernadette's contacting him now. I mean, one of the things that I think would be important to recognize, this is an elected position. And one of the things that one of the things that I think that I would like to see out of this is to get someone who's going to run for mayor that has as diverse of a background as they can. I mean, one of the things that happens in our current political system, particularly for the legislature, is that it tends to skew toward people who are wealthy or people who are retired because there's no pay for them. So one of the things is, I think we should be willing to pay the mayor or whoever's going to be the mayor enough where they could live over here and they can support their family and and we can attract candidates who are going to run for mayor that can do that. So they aren't just either from the retired class or from the wealthy class, that we want, a varied group of people that would be willing to run for mayor. Because I think that's part of the thing that we should look at when we're going forward, because I would like to see a robust slate of candidates running for mayor in this next election.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Cardenas just let us know that he's walking into a meeting right now, so he's unavailable right now.
Okay. Could you see if he's available for 5 o'clock tomorrow and put it on the agenda that he could explain his duties or what it does in the, or even after the session? Would you guys like to have him talk after the public session or before?
I think before, just as a courtesy to him, since he's showing up on demand, really.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, we cannot amend the agenda at this point.
He could come and speak from petitions from the floor and give us his point of view, though, right?
There
We-
probably is a way we could do it, but we can't change the agenda. That's for sure.
Okay, we can amend the agenda at the meeting itself and ask, can we not?
I think first we need to see if he's available.
Okay, so if he's available and he's willing to do that, let's see if we can amend the agenda tomorrow, just to add him to that, or we can have him as items from the floor, like Member Benato said, because it would be good.
He
you-
could
Yeah, that would be,
Maybe matters from staff or matters from.
yes, yeah, because I think it's important for him to, I think it's really important for him to talk, because we just want to know what his week is like and everything. I can't imagine that he's not putting in more than 40 hours a week. That's just, and all the stuff that he's doing. Go ahead, Bernadette. Did you want to talk?
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. We typically don't work only 8 hours a day, and he's here well past the 5 o'clock hour, and he's here before 8 o'clock every morning. So he is most definitely working more than 40 hours a week.
And then he does have ceremonial duties too. He goes to chamber events. He goes to lots of other events. I see him cutting ribbons at different places. So he's got a lot of varied duties that go after hours, that are part of the mayor's job, and that are not necessarily political in nature. Go ahead.
Just to continue the discussion, I think you're absolutely right to want a broad and diverse group of candidates for mayor. Hope that salary will encourage some to a seek office that might not otherwise. But at the same time, that's not to say there isn't a person out there, but the person who is elected mayor is responsible for a city with a budget of $500 million. And you want somebody who, as best as possible, the voter can be confident they have that skill as well. And that they're not coming here and seeking office just for a higher salary that might be available. I'm just putting that out there. That's the reality of what they have competency in managing effectively. And at the same time, encouraging as many people as possible to keep that.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Member Vice Chair. So if we could, can we just kind of like go around and see what I would like to hear from everybody. So if we can start with Member Ray Sandoval, if you could give us some of your insights on what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think the discussion has been really good. I do think it would be beneficial if we could hear from the mayor just to learn a little bit about his time. I mean, I do see that tension between, incentivizing people who are not qualified to run, but at the same time, I do want to make sure that that needs to be part of our discussion. Ultimately, we decide, because I do think that having somebody that either is independently wealthy or has money to fund a campaign versus somebody who's retired, those are different skill sets as well. And so I think that we should at least have that part of the discussion. Whether or not we ultimately go down that road is something a little bit different. And I think that at the same time, we want to be prudent about what we do and how we do it, because we could have set a precedent for how this is the first, I'm always weary when we're the first ones to do something, because you inadvertently set up precedents and rules, and people go back and say, what did they do? And so we're also speaking to kind of the future as well. So I feel that as a little bit of a burden.
Member Cynthia Sandoval?
Just again, and I think I'm just repeating what others have said, it's makes me very apprehensive to make a decision on such a short turnaround, given limited information or the information that we have available. I think, if we're looking at this holistically, one of the other things that we would definitely talk about would be available budget, because you can't set a salary or determine a salary without looking at it as a component. So, how much did the city budget increase for this, for FY24? Because that would have to be part of that decision too. Because if we increase this budget here, what is that gonna impact for other salaries or other positions? And that has a trickle down effect that I think is usually worth a discussion. I think that it would be helpful to hear about the position. I think that if we get the document that really outlines the roles and responsibilities, that would be just as helpful. That's kind of where I am right now.
Okay, thank you. Member Sullivan?
I pulled up a list of the former mayors. I've been here 40 years, which isn't a long time. But we've had a diverse group of mayors, even when we weren't getting salaries. And I just thought that was an interesting point. We've had some very, very top mayors of all different walks. And looking over Bernadette's list here of all these comparative cities, I think it's rather fascinating. First of all, I don't think I'd ever want to run for mayor in Yuma, Arizona. 12,000. But I find it's all very interesting, but it's all also confusing, because a lot of this, maybe all of it, is apples and oranges. I mean, it's helpful to look at, right? We also have another issue in Santa Fe. First of all, I think there's no city on here that's a capital city. That presents issues. Politically, I think probably most of them. It's also a major tourist destination. You have to deal with the hotels, restaurants, all that huge industry. So Santa Fe is a unique place. So I think we can get caught up in too much minutiae. I think it's really good.
Okay, thank you, Member Sullivan. Mr. Vice Chair?
Thank you. It's interesting you brought up the chart, because I was noodling that over the weekend as well, and the additional information that the director gave us. I saw Pueblo, Colorado on this chart with a comparatively a little bigger than Santa Fe, 111,000 population. But a budget of 133 million, which is a quarter, basically, of what budget here is. And a mayor who has a salary of $150,000. I did some further research and found what the circumstances were that caused that. They hadn't had a mayor for 100 years, decided to institute a mayoral form of government about 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And the candidate who at the time won, was at that salary. I don't, and I guess that salary has stayed in place. That person is no longer in office, as mayor now. But they were trying to find someone who could really get that city moving again, because it had been somewhat stagnant. To the point, and this was for Stephanie, they do have employee count. Oh, okay. I thought maybe you hadn't seen. I looked at smaller cities that were state capitals around the country. And there are 6 cities that are, or 7 cities that are smaller in nature and size that are state capital. Dover, Delaware, Augusta, Maine, Montpelier, Vermont, Charleston, West Virginia, Cheyenne, Wyoming, Lansing, Michigan, Springfield, Illinois, and Albany, New York. And where I could get salary, I got salary, mayoral salaries for 6 of them. And I fiddled with the numbers, took the population of each, divided by, took the amounts, the total, population total divided, came up with a cost per person. And if you applied that to Santa Fe, the mayor's salary here would be about $127,000. It was just an interesting way to look at maybe cities that were comparable in a different way. They're not in the region, but it.
So can you tell us of those capital cities, what their salaries were? I like analysis, so I like the way you broke that down.
Dover, Delaware's mayor had a salary of $52,000 plus an expense allotment of $5,000. West Virginia, Charleston, salary is $125,000. Cheyenne, Wyoming, salary is $95,000. Lansing, Michigan, salary is $139,600. Springfield, Illinois was a salary of $129,600. And Albany, New York, the salary of $135,000.
Thank you. That's very enlightening. Okay.
And I'm concerned though, I mean, this is just me doing the best I can with a computer to get numbers. Whether they're accurate or not, I'm not sure. As the director found, probably these numbers can be all over the place online without phone calls and real research.
Correct.
Be very cautious about using them in a final way. But it just gave me a ballpark.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Vice.
As far as overall, I'm still very concerned about the time frame. Trying to come up with numbers. We found, I think, that we can't extend that April 30th date, but at the same time, we could leave things alone for now and encourage council to rethink the date sometime, the possibility of amending their legislation or coming up with new legislation, modifying the date, giving us an opportunity to take another shot at 3 months.
We could, but I think, so is this in the charter or is this in the code? The mayor's salary, do you know? Because if it's in the charter, it has to be changed by referendum. If it's in the code,
I think as far as the mechanics of doing this,
okay,
but please, I love.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Cardenas is looking at it right now. I believe it's in the code, but we'll confirm now.
okay. But so just so you know, an ordinance change like just any ordinance change is about a 3-month process. It doesn't usually happen like that. I mean, and based on the direction that we got from the city attorney's office, I think they want us to make a decision. My question about that is once we make the decision, or say if we were to make this decision by tomorrow, can we modify, because this commission is, or this salary commission is set up for what, 4 years? So if, could we modify the decision afterwards? In other words, we can make the initial decision, then we can have other hearings that going forward and then modify the decision so that way, because the mayor doesn't get elected until 2026. And that's 2025, excuse me. Yeah, so he takes office in 2026. So, I mean, there's, yeah, they won't start announcing for mayor until like next year. So there's time for that. So if we just made a decision and then we could modify that, are we allowed to do that? I mean, that's a question that I think, because I think that everybody over here is of like mind that we want to have more time to do more research for that. And the only thing that we're constrained by is the fact that this is in the code right now, and we have to make a decision by tomorrow, and we just got together just last week.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the comments and the question. I think that we would need to discuss with the legal team to see if that's possible. I can't speak for them, but it is my belief that the reason that the date was set to make sure that it was based on the job responsibilities for the mayor and not nobody has declared that they're running for mayor right now. So it's purely based on the job responsibilities, and there's no notion that it's based on a particular person who might be running for mayor or otherwise. So it's completely just based on the job responsibilities. And I could be wrong, but that's my understanding of the date, and making sure, because people can announce whenever they announce, but I think that could be relatively soon if they'll be elected in 2025. So we can talk to legal about that. I just don't know if that's possible for this time around. And I just want to reiterate the reason why we're in such a compressed time frame is we didn't have a lot of applicants submitting for this committee. It was really difficult. We put it out several times and we didn't have a lot of interest. So we were really trying hard to meet this date.
I totally understand that. I mean, but as a person who participates in the political process pretty significantly, the announcement usually for the local elections doesn't usually come until after the general election. So we have at least until November before you're going to see anybody that's going to start announcing it and everything. There's a lot to making an announcement, especially for mayor. There might be people thinking about it, but there's a lot of that goes into that. And I really would like to see us do our job as thoughtfully as possible. So let me go on to member Beninado and let her give her comments, and then we can go around the table again, because
Thank you. I agree that I think it's important that the mayor come and tell us sort of his schedule now, because he is the first full-time mayor. So we have some idea, like, how did you spend your time? It's not like how anybody else might spend their time. And certainly I hope if the public makes comments tomorrow that they're going to not focus on why they don't like this mayor, but are going to focus on what they think the salary should be and why, as opposed to a personality. And I hope that our committee, no matter what, wouldn't really be influenced by who may announce and try to, form the requirements for them. I am concerned about not making the salary too high And this is my concern even with state legislative salaries, is that there'll be people who will run because of the pay on the job, not because they're competent. And that is my concern. It's not like, and to me, taking into account the head of the public schools or even a city manager is not comparing apples to apples, because they do job searches and they're nationwide job searches, and they're very specific about the skills that that person has to have. Whereas this is a political race, and whoever wins it gets the salary. It's really, really different. You could have no qualifications, or just that I was born here and I was raised here, and that would be your qualification. And some people, that would be their qualifications, and they would run, and they might get a lot of votes. But they may not be competent to run a business that has a $500,000 or $500,000 or $500 million budget. So I think there's a fine balancing act going on. And again, I like to think of it as these three activities that a mayor will engage in, and then how much, given how the charter is set up and how it's been functioning, does the mayor really engage heavily in executive action or just kind of lightly? Just all those kinds of things. It would be nice for me to see what the counselors make, and, maybe even do a cost of living increase as a part of a recommendation for the mayor's salary. And maybe you don't even have to have a commission. You just keep doing cost of living. And I know that this was hard to fill this commission, but I know I applied in time. And, the research still had to be done because this commission had to meet at some point. And I just found the answer from the city attorney to be not really transparent about whether we could continue or extend this. My feeling is we can't. We're going to have to make a decision by tomorrow. But I do like these sort of, I wouldn't say tentative decisions, but decisions that give somebody flexibility later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Benonato. Member Dixon?
Thank you so much. A lot of great, sorry, I've got allergies. A lot of great comments this afternoon, and I want to thank everyone for the weighing in, and I have similar sentiments as well. I do think that the job of the mayor is extremely unique. However, I know it would be helpful to see a written description of what he does. I think it's really important, if at all possible, if we can have him come join us, because I am sure there are many, many, many duties that he does that are not even close to being listed on that job description. That's just the nature of the work. I'm going to come back once again to salary and the cost of living in our community, because I do think that it's important to encourage locals in Santa Fe that are born and raised to apply to run for mayor. And I understand that there's some concerns regarding paying too high of a salary, but I think people in our community, if they are involved in politics, they do understand that legislators and elected officials in our community do not get paid high salaries. I'm not saying that we should be paying anyone $200,000 a year, but I do think we do need to take in consideration the cost of living and how it continues to increase. Currently, a median price home in Santa Fe, if you weigh based on the county and the city, is $680,000. I don't believe a mayor making $110,000 a year could feasibly afford a home of that price range. So I do think we do need to really look at the cost of living, and I understand a decision does need to be made by tomorrow, but I do think we should explore the opportunities to possibly make a change to it, because we're looking at 2026. And who knows what the cost of living is going to increase in our community in the next year and a half or so. Just lots of variables.
Okay, so one of the things that I think would be healthy for is to have, probably since the pandemic or maybe since 2018, is to see what the annual cost of living was in the CPI for, annually, and then see what the average is. Because sometimes I remember a couple of years ago, it was 8%. There was 2% all of this stuff is what people are getting raised at. Because if you look at if you're talking about a cost of living raise for the mayor's position, you can basically say the mayor hasn't gotten a cost of living raise since 2018. And so, so that is something that I think we should need to take into account. But I mean, this is a political position too. And people do not run for this usually for the salary, but I do agree that we need to have a competitive salary to, to attract people that are running. I really like the vice chair's analysis on what he was talking about on doing it as a percent of the population or a percentage of that, where he came up with 127,000. I'm not saying that that should be the salary, but I like coming up with some sort of methodology of why we were to do that. Because I think we're going to have to be able to explain to the public what decision and why we're making that decision when we do that. I think one of the things I'm going to say is I hope that the city has noticed and advertised and promoted this public comment section tomorrow, because I'd like to see as many people come in to talk about that. I don't know if it's been on the city's Facebook pages and everything, but I haven't seen anything in the Santa Fe New Mexican since Thursday, and I would just like to see if we can get things in the newspapers and whatever the city's public information to get people to come over here to talk about this, because I would hate to have this this meeting tomorrow and have an empty house. Go ahead, Member Benato.
In trying to let people know, I thought it was good just to do as much as possible. So I did write a letter to the editor as a member at large and let the public know that we were taking public comment tomorrow starting at 5. It could be by Zoom or in person. So hopefully that is just one aspect. I think putting it on Facebook is also really important, and on the city webpage. So that people who might just randomly go to those things will see it as well.
If I may,
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
I just wanted to add that Member Benenato's letter was published today morning.
Okay, thank you. Also, could you see if the city could put this on Nextdoor? I know that's widely looked at. Is there anybody else that has any comment or things that we should move forward with going forward? Like we've looked at this information that we have. We're gonna see if we can talk with the mayor. I mean, it looks to me like we're gonna have a long night tomorrow night, have a discussion with this.
I was going to add in looking at Director the HR director's chart provided yesterday. I also analyzed, there's 17 cities that we have mayor's salary for here. We don't know whether they're full-time or part-time, but I took the 16 of them that didn't include Santa Fe and totaled them and then divided by 16 to come up with an average what's here. And then I did it another way. I took, with the assumption that the extreme high and the extreme low might be variable anomalies, I pulled them out and came up with another average. And for the sake of, for what it's worth, 85,468 is the average of all 16, and 86,106 is the average of 14 if you take out the high.
Okay, but that is okay. Thank you.
But we don't know whether how many are those.
Right, and we also don't know what the cost of living is in those particular communities. Okay. I think we've exhausted what we needed to talk about this morning, unless anybody has anything else. Does everybody agree with that? Okay, so the chair entertains a motion to adjourn then? Oh, you are right. Let's go with matters from staff.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just get clarification on any further information you'd like before tomorrow, so I'm clear and you have what you need before tomorrow evening. I do have cost of living information. Whether mayors are full-time or part-time, if I can find that information, I think to Vice Chairman Breckner's point, sometimes it's difficult to retrieve that information on their web pages because some don't have that detail. And to Commissioner Cynthia Sandoval's point, maybe a listing of our cost of living that we've provided to employees over the course of the last few years. I've heard some discussion about that, and maybe that would be helpful as well. I can provide that, the code, so everyone knows what their responsibilities are of the mayor. And I believe that's what I have. If there's anything else, please let me know.
Okay, Member Benonato?
I was just wondering too about benefits. I know that might be really hard to find, but I think benefits, City of Santa Fe gives incredibly good benefits, like pays almost the entire cost of your health insurance, and it's very well. You have good coverage there. You have family leave, sick leave, holidays, vacation. And mayors, I'm assuming, getting all of that. So, are these other cities comparable in benefits? And I don't know if that's something you can really find out by tomorrow or not, but I think it would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, Member Benonato, can I just get direction on which cities we're comparing to? Because I think, as Commissioner Sullivan mentioned, it's not really apples to apples. So are we comparing cities that are the capital city? Are we comparing comparable population? Are we comparing comparable budgets? I think if we kind of hone in on those ones, then I can really focus on those particular ones. That might be.
That's a good question. So what cities do you think that we should focus on? Go ahead. You want to go ahead?
Go ahead, from my point of view.
Sure.
First time. But, what comes out glaring to me is the city of Gilbert, which has almost what we're paying our mayor now, and number of employees are almost identical. The budget's about the same size, so I think that's a real key one. I don't know, going down, let's see, I don't know, anybody else? That was just the one I saw that was very, very close.
I would say the city of Ogden, Utah. They have a council mayor form. They have about a little bit less than the number of employees, but they have a $261 million budget, and they have about the same population as we do. I think it would be good if you're gonna. I think we should. I know that Albuquerque is, they're at 500,000 people, but if they're comparable, and they're also, you said that they're going to increase the salary to 146,000. So I think that's another one. Member Dixon, did you?
I was gonna say, I think we should also include Boulder, Colorado. I think that there's some very similar comparables, and also their cost of living is very similar.
Agreed. Does anybody else have any other cities? I mean, one of the things I can tell you is Los Alamos County doesn't have a mayor form of government, but but they have a high cost of living over here. And so I would be interested to know what their, at least what their benefits are. And how much their county counselors make, more or less.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I can definitely look at the benefits and their counselors. I did include, per your request, the county manager salary, who was recently appointed, I believe, in March of this year. And it's 261,000 annually.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Go ahead, members.
On the Los Alamos, are they being paid at University of California wage, even on the political, the county side? I mean, I know at the lab, they're University of California wage scale, or were. And so are they pegging the manager's salary to compare to what the employees at Lano make? Because it seems really high for a manager.
Mr. Chairman, Member Benenato, I'm not sure if they're using that as their baseline. I can see if any of that information is available on their website and get back to you.
Member Dixon.
Chairman, I think this is going to be a lot of great information that's going to be provided to us this afternoon. I would love the opportunity to be able to digest that in a conversation with comment. That possibility, or is that, I know you mentioned we're not able to make any changes to the agenda. I'm just trying to think if there's a way that we could all connect, at least for 30 minutes prior to the public comment.
Chair and Member Dixon, we can move the agenda around, so matters from the committee can come up before public comment. So we could move where that portion of the agenda lies before public comment. But that motion will have to be made at the meeting tomorrow.
Hold on, let's look at, let's look at that agenda for tomorrow. And see. Because we want to add the mayor to it. And then we want to add, let me see. So we have discussion, we have, let's see, we have a public comment first, discussion of the agenda and possible action. Then we have matters from staff, matters from the committee, and the matters from chair. And we want to have, if the mayor agrees to come, we want to have the mayor talk first. Is that what we're looking at? Okay, and then you wanted to have a discussion before we open it up for public comment? I mean,
I'm just wondering if we could summarize what the information we have at the beginning of the meeting, maybe after the mayor speaks. Summarize that so the members of the public know what we have. And then they may be able to respond to the information that we have. I don't want to have too much of a discussion beforehand, only because I don't want the public to think that we've already decided, and really it's just pro forma to listen to them. And so I don't mind saying, here's what we've heard so far, and here's what we think is important in making decisions. What do you think, public? Would make me feel like we're really including the public and having the perception for them that they're included.
so could you add the information that you find today and the information that you provided us into the packet for tomorrow so that people can have access to that? That would be greatly appreciated. I think we're all tracking on the same wavelength. Does anybody else, would you prefer to wait until after the public comment and then, or to do that summarization and then wait until after the public comment to go into discussion. Is Member Ray Sandoval?
Yeah, I think that it's important to let the public speak as soon as we can, because then people just drop off or they lose interest. And so I think that my preference would be not to make the public wait. No, we want to give the mayor, if the mayor's available, we want to give him preference because he's a busy guy. But I think if we could do a quick summary and get to public comment, I think that's important. And the other thing too is I want to understand what the public's saying before we kind of, start baking the cake.
Gotcha. Member Cynthia Sandoval, do you have any?
I think that sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, thank you. Member Sullivan? Okay. So let's, tomorrow when we talk about that, let's just see if we can talk about, we would like to get the mayor to speak first and then do like a very brief summary. Like we can ask the staff to kind of do that, and then and then just be here and just listen to what everybody has to say. And depending upon how many people we have over here, we'll decide then how long that they get to talk, 2, 3 minutes or so. Usually I think it's 2 to 3 minutes, but we'll see who turns out.
And Mr. Chairman, if the mayor is not available, I will again send out the charter information that outlines the job responsibilities of the mayor.
Okay, could you also put that in the packet? Thank you. That way everybody has a chance. I want this meeting to be very transparent. I want the public to have what we have. Except for what we decide, what we hear when you're making your summarization, but I would just like to let them have what we have so they can make their comments, because I'm very interested, or I think everybody's very interested to see what the public has to say. Now, one thing I would just like everybody to remember too, we got to make sure that we got to separate the personality part of it from the position as much as we can, because people are going to come in and talk to however they're going to say, but I think we're looking to make a decision for whoever's going to be mayor in the future. And so we got to look through all of that and see and I'm saying it could good, bad, or whatever they say, emotional or not. I've been to a lot of these public hearings and there's going to be a lot of stuff that's coming in. And I think I welcome to hear what everybody has to say. I think that's really important. Member Cynthia Sandoval?
Just to get clarification, so I understand correctly. So when we determine the salary, it'll go into effect January of 2025? 26, okay. And so this is kind of like a one and done thing. Once we decide, even though we're on the commission for 4 years, like we're not meeting regularly after that. Oh.
Well, I don't know. Can you provide us direction? Do we meet regularly after that, or what duties would we have? Are we just done, or are we going to have to meet again for the next? I don't know. Don't know the answer to that question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the chapter real quick. Pursuant to 6-19.4, beginning 2024, the commission shall meet and set the salary for the office of mayor every 4 years, no later than April 30th, to be budgeted for the next mayoral term, whether the mayor in office in the next term is in the first or subsequent term. That's all it says here on section 6-19.3. It states that members of the commission shall serve 4-year terms. A member shall serve no more than 2 terms after 2 consecutive unexcused absences, a commission member shall be automatically removed and a new member shall be appointed. It doesn't talk about the amount of meetings to be conducted that I can see, but I'll continue to look at this as well.
I guess that would probably be up to the commission. I don't know what other duties we would have, but it seems to me like it's a one and done thing. But I don't know. I mean, we're appointed for 4 years. I don't know if there's anything else that we want to do, but I guess we could talk about that. Go ahead, Member Benonato.
My understanding from like redistricting, commissions and how they're trying to structure them is that you make the decision and then you're done and you only would come back, say, if the commission was sued because they challenged the redistricting, or somebody, I guess, sued us or the city because they thought the mayor's salary was too high or too low, whatever. But I really think it's make this decision and then you're done, unless we do something where it's sort of not quite a final decision. The salary this level, but possibly adjust later on. That would seem to me like something where perhaps we would say, let's come back in the next amount of time to look at this again. But other than that, if we make a decision and say, here's the salary we be, then I think we are done. I'm just sorry we have to do it by April 30th because it doesn't make any sense in terms of fiscal need or political need, nothing.
Okay, thank you, Member. Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair. Could you put on your,
I'm sorry.
that's all right.
As far as the issue of the date, I've expressed my concern, other members have expressed their concern. And so related to one of the things that Director Salazar is going to get for us, and that's cost of living. I think the trend information, how much, what was cost of living in 2018 or 2019, what is it now? And say, all right, it's 15, 20% different. That might be a factor we could plug in, deal with from the 110,000 now. And, but still maintaining the theory of what it was. And at the same time, then request the opportunity for the code change so that we can readdress this more fully and get more information that sometimes people, so it's a partial solution to the issue we're dealing with. So I would encourage getting the proper trending information because it might help us come to a determination and do that's reasonable without seeming to be arbitrary. Well, I don't think we're being arbitrary. I just think we just don't have the information or haven't been able to assess it as fully as we might pinpoint what the flaws of that information might be or interpretation. The other thing too, if I may, on the issue of benefits, I too think the benefits even that Santa Fe has would be useful to know. Yeah, it's great to get the comparative information, but for instance, I think the state, it came out that state legislators had a pension benefit that a lot of people didn't know about. That was publicized just recently. And so I don't know whether there's a pension benefit, a long-term plan for a mayor. And, there might be a lot of money that is being made available at some time in a pension. I don't think anybody's ever asked it. So when you look at benefits, please look at that one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So if we're finished with matters from staff, let's Is there any more matters from the committee? I think we've talked a lot about that. Okay, I have there's no matters from the chair. I think we've fully aired that, so seeing nothing, our next meeting is gonna be tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by member Ray Sandoval. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by member Bridget Dixon. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.